Foundries like TSMC are perhaps the world's most important companies that no one has ever heard of. But what they do is the single most advanced, complex, and impactful process that human beings have ever created. These foundries, more than any other companies, are testing the limits of the world's most advanced manufacturing techniques. And it's also that our cell phones, PCs, and AI models can run faster, last longer, and process more data than ever before. What's up, guys? Welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the companies who manufacture the world's most advanced computer chips that run our digital world, computer chip foundries. Before we get into today's video, I have to mention, as always, I am an employee of Qualcomm. The opinions in this video are my own personal opinions and do not represent the views of Qualcomm. Also, the information shared in this video is generally available public information on the semiconductor industry and does not represent Qualcomm. Okay, let's get back to the video. Just to give you an idea of how unbelievably impressive the work that semiconductor fabrication companies do is, here's 10 unbelievable facts about the semiconductor fabrication process. Number 1. The most advanced semiconductor fab costs more to build than 3 aircraft carriers. The newest TSMC 1.4 nanometer fab in Taichung, Taiwan will cost about $49 billion to build, while the average cost of an aircraft carrier is just $13 billion. Number 2, there are more transistors manufactured per day than there are cells in the human body. There are approximately 37 trillion cells in the average human body, while all of the fabs in the world combine to produce over 2.7 quadrillion transistors per day. Number 3, ASML high-NA EUV machines are the single most advanced and complex machine ever created. They contain over 700,000 parts, weigh 180 tons, and cost over $370 million per machine. Number 4, the Cerebrus wafer-scale engine has more transistors than any chip ever created, with its latest version featuring over 4 trillion transistors on a single chip. Number 5, only one company, ASML, is capable of building the high-NA EUV machines that are used to produce the world's most advanced chips. And only one single company, TSMC, produces over 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips. Number 6, 2 nanometer process transistors are the smallest transistors ever created, measuring approximately 12 to 15 nanometers wide, while an average human hair has a width of 75,000 nanometers, meaning over 5,000 transistors can be fit within the width of a single human hair. Number 7, a single advanced fab can use over 5 million gallons of water per day, a higher rate of consumption than a city of 50,000 people. Number 8, 37% of the world's GDP is produced using semiconductors or the devices that they run. Number 9, eventually transistor size will run up to the laws of physics. The world's smallest transistors, made using the 2 nanometer process, are 12 to 15 nanometers wide, while a silicon atom is just 0.2 nanometers wide, meaning eventually, and probably surprisingly soon, transistors won't be able to physically get any smaller. Number 10, an advanced fab must be 10,000 times cleaner than the world's cleanest operating rooms, as a single speck of dust is larger than millions of transistors, meaning if a single speck of dust falls on die while it's being manufactured, the entire die is ruined. So I hope these facts have given you a much better understanding of just how unbelievable the semiconductor fabrication process is. It's seriously the most complex and unbelievable thing that human beings have ever done. Now, let's get into today's video. Before we get started, as always, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like the video and leave a comment below. And if you want to learn more about the semiconductor industry, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Let's go. So, before we get started on this video about foundries, many of you may be wondering what actually constitutes a foundry. Which one of the tons of semiconductor companies that you've probably heard of are actually foundries? Intel, AMD, TSMC, NVIDIA, which one of them actually constitute a foundry? And what's the difference between a foundry and a fab? And what's the difference between an IDM and a foundry? These questions are completely understandable, as the semiconductor industry is perhaps the most complex and segmented industry in the entire world. So even many people that work in the semiconductor industry don't truly understand the difference between all these different types of companies. But if you want to understand this structure much better, don't worry, I got you. First, a foundry, also called a pure play foundry, is a company that solely focuses on chip manufacturing and does not do any chip design. They simply manufacture chips based on their clients' designs. The foundry model, which was invented by TSMC, differs from previous semiconductor fabrication models, most famously the IDM model, or integrated device manufacturer model, in which a single company like Intel does every step in the computer chip manufacturing process, including design, fabrication, and assembly and testing. Just a side note here real quick, people often get the words foundry and fab mixed up. As we mentioned previously, a foundry is a company that solely focuses on chip manufacturing, while a fab is the actual chip manufacturing facility. So, most foundries own many fabs. For example, TSMC is a foundry that owns dozens of fabs, like Fab 21 in Arizona and Fab 20 in Hsinchu, Taiwan. Another side note here, many of the semiconductor companies that you've probably heard of besides TSMC, like Qualcomm, Nvidia, AMD, Apple, and Google, are all chip designers. None of them are foundries, and none of them do any chip manufacturing themselves. They follow a model which is different but also complementary to the foundry model, which is called fabless design model, where they simply focus solely on design and allow the foundries to focus solely on manufacturing. When the semiconductor industry was in its early years of development, from the 1950s to the 1980s, it was dominated by IDMs. Pretty much all of the top semiconductor companies like Intel, Texas Instruments, RCA, and Fairchild were all IDMs. This is because the design and manufacturing processes were simple enough that one company could easily manage everything and still compete in the market. But in the 1980s, the rise of the first PCs and analog cell phones created a huge demand for chips, which were smaller and performed exponentially better than previous generations. Eventually, it became clear that the process was becoming too complex for one company to handle everything. So many new semiconductor companies like Qualcomm and Xilinx abandoned chip manufacturing from the beginning, becoming the first fabless design companies. Then it was just a matter of time before someone made the same move to also decouple the manufacturing process from the IDM model and create a process which focused solely on manufacturing. So, in stepped Morris Chang, who invented the foundry model, where a company focuses solely on the chip manufacturing process and does not do their own designs. Morris Chang, the founder of TSMC, knew when he founded TSMC in 1987 that the pure play foundry model, which TSMC was the first company to implement, would have 3 clear advantages over its IDM competitors. These advantages are, number 1, customer trust. Most of TSMC's customers are design companies like Nvidia, Qualcomm, and AMD, or system companies like Apple and Google. None of these companies manufacture chips, they simply make chip design, then send their designs to a manufacturer for manufacturing. These companies not only compete with each other in chip design, but they also compete with IDMs like Samsung and Intel in chip design as well. So when these companies create their design and choose a chip manufacturer to make their chips, they have 2 choices. They can choose either an IDM, who may also be their competitor, or a pure play foundry, who does not compete with them at all in chip design. In general, it's bad business practice to give your designs to your competitors. So for most design companies, the choice between a foundry and an IDM is a pretty easy choice. They generally prefer to choose a foundry. The second advantage that foundries have over IDMs is scale. Scale is an important factor for semiconductor manufacturers because of the cost structure of the semiconductor manufacturing. In manufacturing, there are generally 2 kinds of cost: fixed and variable cost. Fixed costs are the costs that are fixed, regardless of how many units the manufacturer produces. In semiconductor manufacturing, these costs are costs of machinery, R&D, fab construction, specialized labor, and depreciation, while variable costs are costs that vary with production volume. In semiconductor fabrication, 70 to 85% of the costs are fixed costs. This means that before a single finished wafer is produced, costs to fabricate advanced nodes are already in the billions of dollars. So in order to make back the money to pay for these costs and see a profit, the foundry must produce huge volumes of wafers. Luckily, for pure play foundries, they have a huge advantage in obtaining large demand quantities because they can pull together the total demand of dozens of their design company clients in order to reach volumes that a single IDM, mostly manufacturing their own chips, never could. The third advantage that a foundry has over an IDM is focus. By focusing solely on manufacturing, a foundry is able to put all of their time and money into perfecting the manufacturing process. Foundries invest billions of dollars each year to make their manufacturing processes more efficient, cost-effective, and better than their competitors, while IDMs have to split their time and money across all parts of their business, making them slower to evolve and less efficient in fabrication. Overall, these advantages are why TSMC has become by far the world's most important chip manufacturer and its sixth most valuable company, while Intel has gone from being the second most valuable company in the world in 2000 to being barely in the top 100 in 2025. Now that we've talked about what a foundry is and how foundries differ from the other type of semiconductor companies, let's get into what foundries actually do. As mentioned previously, foundries focus solely on chip manufacture. This is because as technologies have become more advanced, demand for chips with more computational power has forced both the design and manufacturing of semiconductors to become more costly and complex. By focusing solely on manufacturing, foundries are able to produce more advanced chips than ever before. While the main focus of this video is on the business side of the foundry model, and there are tons of videos about the semiconductor fabrication process made by incredibly talented engineers who know more than I ever could about semiconductor manufacturing, it is necessary here to talk a little bit about what the fabrication process actually entails. Before we get into the process, it's important to quickly review how computers work. Essentially, computers run using binary code, or series of zeros and ones that represent information. By building combinations of zeros and ones into different patterns, computers are able to represent and store all information digitally, or in numbers, as in zeros and ones. In order to actually create and store these patterns, computer chips are filled with millions of transistors, which are a microcomponent that acts as a switch, which can be turned on and off by voltage applied to it, with 1 representing on and 0 representing off. If you use enough of these transistors, it's possible to represent any information digitally, whether it's math, pixels on a screen, or AI models. But the more complex the computing task becomes, the more computational power a chip needs. And the best way to give a chip more computational power is to build more transistors into it. But the more transistors that get added to a chip, the larger the chip becomes, which means the world's most advanced computer chips must be huge, right? Well, that's what makes what foundries do so incredible. They figured out how to not only make chips with billions of more transistors, but they've also figured out how to make those same chips dozens of times smaller. So now let's get into the semiconductor manufacturing process to figure out exactly how we've been able to create chips with billions of transistors that are the size of your fingernail. The process begins with a chip design from a design company like Apple or Nvidia. This design is complete with all of the details of what the finished chip should have, including all transistors, interconnects, and individual units for different parts of the finished system like an SoC. A side note, an SoC, or a system on a chip, is a single chip in which all components of a chip system, like its CPU, GPU, sensor chips, and connectivity chips, and many others, are built into a single silicon die by a foundry. Another side note, a wafer is the circular silicon structure that acts as the base on which chips are created. Dies are the individual chips that make up a wafer. A single wafer can contain hundreds or thousands of dies, depending on the size of the die and the wafers. After getting the design from the design company, the foundry will then plan its production process so that all machines in the fabrication process are set to the specs needed for that specific design. Then, the physical fabrication process begins with ultra-pure silicon wafers, which are sourced by a foundry from a wafer manufacturer, like SEH or Global Wafers. Using advanced machines, such as EUV lithography tools, foundries pattern microscopic features like transistors and their interconnects that are thousands of times thinner than a human hair. Each wafer goes through hundreds to thousands of tightly controlled steps, including photolithography, ion implementation, etching, thin film deposition, and chemical mechanical polishing, and their metal interconnects layer by layer. These processes are repeated over and over again until the finished wafer, with its many layers, is created. The finished wafer is now made up of hundreds of die, which will later be cut from the wafer and used to make a finished chip product. Every step must be performed in extreme cleanroom environments, where, because of the microscopic size of the transistors, even a single dust particle can ruin an entire chip. After weeks of processing, the wafers are electrically tested, approved, and then sent to an OSAT for advanced packaging, assembly, and testing. While the fabrication process is extremely complex, in fact, it's the most advanced manufacturing process that humans have ever created, it's important to remember that all the process does is alter the physical properties of silicon so that it can respond to electrical signals in a way that makes it useful for computers. In today's world, almost everyone has to deal with tons of presentations, reports, documents, and data. Thanks to AI, it's easier than ever to organize your information. So much so that now many people are even vibe coding to build AI apps that are customized specifically to meet their own personal needs. If that sounds like something you could benefit from, then you have to check out Manus AI. Manus isn't just another AI text generator. You give it a goal, it actually delivers a finished result, whether that's a presentation, charts, formatted documents, or even a working app. I'm sure you've experienced this before. A lot of AI models on the market struggle when generating images or slides with traditional Chinese. The text looks broken, and even I, as a non-native Chinese speaker, can tell the characters just aren't right. And the worst part, when you try to fix it, it gets worse, and you end up wasting more time than if you just manually did it yourself. But when I tested Manus, I was honestly so impressed. Using the exact same prompt, it generated a full presentation like this. It not only supports traditional Chinese properly, but the design quality is shockingly good. And here's the best part. If there's something you don't like, you can simply switch to edit mode and edit it however you see fit. That alone can save 80% of your time. Manus is also extremely good when it comes to document process. Within seconds, it produces a well-formatted layout, clean charts, and structured explanations. Not just plain text, but properly organized content with hierarchy and visual clarity. Now here's the part that really impressed me. A lot of people are talking about using Manus to vibe code and build their own fully functioning AI apps without writing a single line of code. I enter the prompt. You can see that I didn't write any code at all. Within seconds, a customized app based on my needs is generated. And what's even cooler is that I can scan the QR code next to it and instantly download and use the app on my phone. It's a fully functioning app that's ready to use right now. Technology shouldn't make us busier, it should save us time. With Manus, tasks that used to take hours can now take just minutes. It builds 90% of the foundation for you, and you focus on creativity, judgment, and refinement. If you regularly create presentations, write documents, or manage a lot of data, or want to build your own tools, I highly recommend using Manus AI. It will completely change the way you think about using AI productivity tools. Now that we've reviewed what foundries are and what they do, let's talk about the top foundries in the world. Number one is TSMC. TSMC, by far, the most valuable, largest, and most famous foundry is the world's first pure-play foundry, TSMC. TSMC was founded by Morris Chang in 1987 and has risen to become possibly the world's most important company and certainly its most important chip manufacturer. TSMC was able to differentiate itself by implementing the pure-play foundry strategy that we discussed earlier. From there, it began to form key partnerships with global customers that would transform it into the world's most advanced chip foundry. TSMC's two most important partnerships have been its partnerships with Apple and NVIDIA. TSMC first began fabricating chips for Apple in 2014. Until 2010, Apple had their iPhone and Mac chips designed and manufactured by Samsung. Then, starting with the iPhone 4, Apple brought chip design in-house with the creation of their chip design organization called Apple Silicon. But their chips were still fabricated by Samsung. But famously, Samsung was also Apple's biggest competitor in the smartphone market with their Galaxy phone series. So in 2014, Apple chose to switch to TSMC to be the main foundry for the iPhone and Mac chips. And since then, TSMC has been Apple's exclusive chip foundry for advanced nodes, far outproducing Samsung in terms of volume and chip quality. TSMC's other most important partnership with NVIDIA began in 1998, when NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang reached out to Morris Chang to ask him if TSMC would be willing to fabricate NVIDIA's gaming GPUs. At the time, TSMC wasn't the top foundry it is today, but it was still a significantly more important company than the small gaming graphics company NVIDIA. But Chang liked Huang and decided to fabricate NVIDIA's GPUs for gaming applications. But it wasn't until the mid-2010s when NVIDIA GPUs started being used for machine learning that their partnership began to grow. Then in 2022, with the launch of ChatGPT, the world's first generative AI chatbot, both companies' stocks and dependence on each other grew considerably. And now, NVIDIA is TSMC's largest customer, moving Apple to number 2 since 2024. It was these key partnerships that helped grow TSMC's revenue, which they then reinvested in R&D, which allowed them to advance faster than any other chip manufacturer. Now, TSMC manufactures over 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips for all of the top technology companies like Google, Apple, Nvidia, Qualcomm, and AMD. TSMC is also now the world's 6th most valuable company and will also likely continue to climb up the list of the world's most valuable companies as the world becomes more and more dependent on computer chip-based technology like smartphones, AI, and autonomous vehicles. Number 2, UMC. United Microelectronics, or UMC, is the world's second largest pure-play foundry after TSMC and is also headquartered in Hsinchu, Taiwan. Just to give you an idea of the dominance of TSMC in the semiconductor manufacturing industry, TSMC is the world's 6th most valuable company with a market cap of $1.65 trillion. While UMC, the world's second largest foundry, is the world's 1,094th most valuable company with a market cap of just $20 billion. UMC was actually founded 7 years before TSMC in 1980. Both companies were founded by the Industrial Technology Research Institute, or ITRI, a Taiwanese governmental organization for technological research. Unlike TSMC, which focuses heavily on the most advanced nodes, UMC specializes in mature and specialty process technologies, such as 28 nanometer nodes and above, along with RF, analog, power management, embedded memory, and display driver chips. These nodes do not require the advanced fabrication technology that TSMC's most advanced nodes require, so their customers come to UMC for their chips' reliability, long life cycle, and cost effectiveness. UMC's top customers are MediaTek, Qualcomm, Broadcom, and other chip designers. The last pure-play foundry that we will discuss is the world's third largest pure-play foundry, GlobalFoundries. GlobalFoundries was created when AMD, previously an IDM, converted their company into a fabless design company by selling off their foundry business. This decision was motivated by the competitive disadvantages that IDMs have when compared to their pure-play foundries that we discussed earlier. AMD struggled to keep pace with TSMC and Intel in chip production and realized that it could become a more profitable company if it pursued a more focused strategy of being a fabless chip design company. When AMD sold its foundry business, it was spun off as GlobalFoundries, and a majority of the shares of the new company were purchased by the Mubadala Investment Company, which is the sovereign wealth fund of Abu Dhabi. And MIC still plays a critical role in the strategic decisions of GlobalFoundries, such as when the company acquired Chartered Semiconductor and IBM's foundry business. Like UMC, GlobalFoundries also focuses on specialty and mature nodes, where long product life and reliability matter more than raw performance. GlobalFoundries' main chip categories include RF and analog chips, power management ICs, automotive chips, and industrial and IoT chips. GlobalFoundries is currently the world's 1,116th most valuable company, with a market cap of under $20 billion. Okay, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed this video where we dove deeply into the semiconductor foundry business model, please be sure to like the video and leave a comment below telling us what you thought was the most unbelievable fact about the semiconductor fabrication process. And as always, if you want to learn more about the semiconductor industry, be sure to subscribe to our channel. See you next time.